a thriving group chat with 8 students is way stronger than a flashy Instagram, TikTok, Snapchat.
It's one thing to be present digitally, digital presence, and then there's a whole other mindset of having a digital strategy.
Unconventional times call for unconventional measures. Good. We can't continue to do what we've always done and expect a different outcome.
You know better than anyone else. Culture is changing.
Youth ministry is complicated,
and it's even more difficult to do it by yourself.
So let's rethink it together.
Join us for this week's episode of Rethinking Youth Ministry.
Welcome back, friends. I'm Ashley, part of the Orange Students team here, and I am so excited to talk about the topic of digital proximity today. But before we jump in, I need y'all to meet the all-star lineup we have here today. Directly across from me is the one, the only, the beautiful, the most creative person I know.
Ash, let's go. Hi, everyone. I don't even know if I can just follow that. That's incredible. I'm not all those things, but I'm just Leslie Mack. I get to serve as the director of high school strategy here on the XP3 team at Orange, which I love. And I'm excited to talk about digital proximity because I've been in so many different contexts. Like the church I started in and spent the first 30 years of my life in, we struggling. We got some things to catch up on. But then I went to one of the churches that are the largest and have one of the most incredible digital strategies. And so I've seen the whole range of things. So I'm excited for today's conversation.
So excited you're here.
Yeah, it's going to be great.
Well, hey, everybody. My name's Dave. I am currently the digital media pastor and young adult ministry liaison at Westside Baptist Church in beautiful downtown Snellville, Georgia, where somebody says everybody's somebody. Served there for a couple of years on staff there, spent around 8 years in youth ministry and before getting into the young adults. And currently have helped 2 churches to develop not only a digital presence, but a digital strategy to present our face to the outside world.
Oh, my goodness. Nice. I can't wait to hear more about that. I want to hear how you've coached them to do that. We'll come back to you momentarily. But before we do that, you need to know the one and only
Nicole Howard. Hey yo, everybody. I am with a completely online church. I love this ministry. I'm the life pastor because I follow children for their life until they go adulting.
A life pastor.
Yeah, so it's like nursery.
I love it.
It's nursery straight through college, and it's hard to get them to leave. So my collegers usually hang out. So we have the adulting on our side too.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, I really enjoy that. I've been in ministry since 18, so we won't be counting up from there.
But not 2018.
No, not 2018. I'm not new to ministry. But yeah, so online just really, really touched my heart during the pandemic, but before that, it was about our disconnected kids, so reaching out to those kids in foster care, military families that have a lot of transition. This was like a really unlocking key factor. So I dove in.
All right. Before we go any further, I do not want anybody to miss, Nicole, you serve at a fully online church.
Completely
100%. Online. Has it always been a completely online church? Is that something new? Tell us about that.
It in itself, yes, it has always been online. It was birthed from a church that just had online streaming.
Okay. Yeah. Very cool. And you are the life pastor at this church. Yeah. So you follow families, kids, cradle to college.
Yes.
Wow. I can't wait to know more about what that strategy looks like and how it's different.
It's
in
so different.
Each phase of development. That's awesome. We'll come back to you in just a moment. But Leslie, I want to throw it to you first.
Okay, what's up?
I want to get everybody on the same page here. Mm-hmm. When we're talking about digital proximity, can you help get us all on the same page? What are we talking about?
Yeah, I think this will be interesting to hear different perspectives on too. Because when I think about digital proximity, I think it's easy for people to think digital proximity means just being where students are, especially when we talk about youth ministry specifically. But they're on Instagram. I have an Instagram account. I'm where they are. But I always think of digital proximity as being with students. So being where they are, when they're there, and how they're there. And I think the how is maybe one of the more important parts of it. It's if you show up unauthentically to a space or a platform, it stands out. And it's I don't want to have a relationship with you. I don't want to do proximity or do life with you if you are showing up kind of encroaching on my digital space, showing up however, it's just that weird thing. So I really do think digital proximity is about being with students, and with isn't next to, it's like doing life with. And
that's so good.
Yeah, that's one of the ways I think of it.
Dave, how do you think about digital proximity?
I agree with everything that Leslie said. And to me, digital proximity is more about developing a relationship with the students that you minister to. Students are quicker to share things that they're going on in their life on social media and on platforms of that nature than they would be anyplace else. And, in the past, I've learned more about what's going on in the life of a student from their Instagram account or Snapchat or things like that. So it's about relationships. I mean, that's what Jesus modeled for us is discipleship through relationship. And that's what, to me, digital proximity means, is developing that space where the student feels comfortable sharing with you.
Yes. That's so good. Nicole, what would you add?
I love that. There are a lot of platforms that I do exactly that, Dave. And Leslie, how you hit on that was perfect, because that's a place where kids can wear a mask and talk about anything they want to talk about. They can totally reinvent themselves. They can be whole, complete, and belong on there. So when you go in that space, please don't be sus.
Yes,
exactly.
Like,
I love that.
You have to, don't be that, that weirdo person. They're like,
like creepy uncle.
Yeah, exactly. So, but when you go in that space, go in that space, like, to learn, no matter how much even if you're a pro at it, go in that space and be open to learning, because they're so much more open to talk to you when they're gaming. Just game with them.
That's so good. So in summary, I guess what we're saying is digital proximity is the amount of connection and interaction you have with someone in digital spaces. Like, somebody who emails with someone is one level of digital proximity, but when you are sharing a Spotify playlist and both adding songs to it, that's a totally different level of digital proximity and the way that you're interacting. Yeah?
Yeah.
Does that feel good?
Exactly.
Okay.
Definitely.
All right. So with all of your experience, I'd imagine there has been a lot that's changed in the last 10 years, 15 years in this space. What is the thing that sticks out to you the most?
Like, about what has changed?
About digital proximity with students.
I mean, it's so broad. My brain is like going 100 different places. I'm trying to rein it in and focus on something specific. I guess the thing that I'll hone in on is identity as it plays in developing your identity online and in person. Sometimes when we do series in the XP3 team, especially in our identity series, we had to talk about how we can either fragment or compartmentalize our identity, which sometimes is healthy and sometimes is not, depending on just kind of the reasons and the motives behind it. But when you show up in digital spaces, like you were saying, they can show up like you were saying, Nicole, they can show up and be who they want to be in that space. And they may have even worked to carve out that space to be a certain type side of themselves, if that makes sense. And so I think thinking holistically about the identity of the students who are showing up, how they're using the platforms, how they're even engaging in real life and online as real life. I don't know, there's just so many layers there.
Yeah, that's good. And I'd imagine 10 or 15 years ago, we didn't have a digital media pastor, or we didn't have I don't know how long your fully online church has been a thing. How long?
It's been like 2.5 years now.
Okay, 2.5 years. Yeah. So, I mean, just that alone has changed. Take us on your journey, Dave.
Well, for me, one of the things that I've had to really stop and reinvent from a digital aspect is where you go. It is so fluid these days, especially with students. We were just discussing earlier about how years ago, Facebook was a big thing for social media. And now if you mention to a student, do you have a Facebook account? They're going to look at you funny and kind of like, ew, give you one of those bad faces. So the key thing to me over the years that I've been doing this is to develop not only a space and a presence, but to go where they are and to learn where they're at. That takes some reaction and some willingness to interface and go out on a limb and develop platforms for yourself that you might not ever have even imagined. But if you really want to connect with them and build that relationship, you've got to go where they are. It's kind of like witnessing. You really have to find out where the people are and go to them and then invite them to come into your space.
Right.
That's so good.
That's I love that. And that's like I call them tribes of kids. They like that better than
Yes.
being like a youth group. They're like, oh, you'll be a youth group in church. I'm like, okay, so when we're out and we're doing this in whatever platform we're doing it in, we go in as a tribe. So they know that they have somebody with them. They know that they're supported. And it's all under, like I said, under that mask of whoever that avatar is, whatever that persona that they created where they feel that they can be free. And sometimes that translates out of there. And then that's the beauty of it. They're able to go into other platforms and help others find themselves, their true identity, you know? And so like, I love that there's even this opportunity, like what a great opportunity we have to be able to reach students from one end of the world to the other.
Yeah.
Oof, what a vision statement. I love that. I feel like I would guess people listening are in the same space we are in terms of over the last couple years, we've all had a chance to experiment with what digital discipleship or connection looks like, try a bunch of things that might not have worked, and maybe a few things that did. And then as, you know, things kind of return to what we call normal now, a lot of the things we tried in the digital space got dropped. Just because manpower, budget power, you know, space, like just capacity. I know people are tired. And I know that it was a hard stretch. What would you say to leaders who might be feeling that way?
Keep carrying on. I mean, the cost of not doing it is a lot more than it would be to keep carrying on. You know, there's a tremendous risk if we don't go to social media and we don't live stream and we don't engage and we don't do podcasts like this to where people can understand the importance of it, then we stand the risk of losing our ability to not only to connect with students, but to disciple them as well.
So good.
I really liked what you said about students discipling other students and helping them to get out and get out from underneath that mask. I've seen that some as well too, but you know, we struggle with that at both the churches that I served at with limited resources, limited personnel. But yet, if you once you sit down and show people that this is important, this is critical in the lives of your students, and especially during the COVID era.
Ash, you asked, like, what would we say to those leaders? I think I would hope they hear the message of do what you can, but don't feel like you have to do what you can't. You know, I think there can be a burnout and an overwhelm trying to be in all the places and do all the things, learn all the technology. But technology is going to keep expanding. You know, digital platforms are going to keep growing. And I really think, and this may be a little, I mean, y'all can push back on this because I'm thinking it as I'm saying it, so who knows? Who knows what's about to come out? But what I really do think is that a thriving group chat with 8 students is way stronger than a flashy Instagram, TikTok, Snapchat. Like trying to be too many places. And so I think if you can get back to why digital proximity matters in your ministry context, and why anything matters in your ministry context, that can help steer how you show up to these platforms and not try to overextend and do, you know, more than is in your energy or in your team's capacity to do.
Exactly. Oh, Leslie, I love that. And Dave, you're absolutely right. You know, empowering kids and youth to be able to do discipleship where they are. You know, we do it in the church and the community. They're online. So to be able to do it there, and to the youth minister, the kids director, I know we laugh about that, but you know, when you're watching and when you're listening to this and you're watching this, I just want you to know that don't give up. Even if you do it to the audience of one kid, that's one more for the kingdom of God. If you have no one in your service, you preach that service like there's 1,000 people there. Don't give up. Don't give in, because Satan will not win.
Ooh. Coach Nicole in the house. I love it. Okay, we're going to come back to Coach Nicole.
Yeah, for real.
We had church this morning.
She needs to show up a few different times in this episode.
I think so too.
Into that. This is why she's a fully online church. You see what she just did? Right. She took us to church.
I had a mic that dropped it.
I love it. One thing I'm picking up on, based on a lot of what we've talked about so far, is it's one thing to be present digitally, digital presence, and then there's a whole other mindset of having a digital strategy. All right. So tell us a little bit about what that looks like and what that difference is for your experience.
Yeah. So, you mind if I give this a stab
Please,
first?
go for it.
I think I can do this one. So, one thing that I noticed right away in the birthing of an online ministry is that in asking kids what they saw in the social media, the way we were using it, they would say, I see things that have already happened that I can't participate in. I see things going on that even if I have a question, no one's going to respond to it. I'm not there. I'm not present. And I'm like, ooh, so I think I have media presence and they don't even think I'm present. You know, so I'm like, okay, we need to change that. So I started posting questions. I started asking them to do challenges and tag me in it. And you might get on this episode, or you might get selected to be a piece of this life. Like, I want to see you show up and show out. Doesn't matter what it looks like. I love bloopers. Send me your mess ups. I want to see that you make mistakes too. And then I would post a bunch of my mistakes. And they was like, oh my goodness, I felt like I was in the room when you tripped on the carpet. And I'm like, yes, I had to save my life. You know,
I love this.
But from that response, when I started changing up what I was putting in, and Leslie, like you said, and Dave, how you mentioned, what I was putting out there and where I was putting it. We don't have to be in all the places. You just got to lock in to your right place for the kids that you're designed to reach.
That's so good, Nicole. Dave, take us where you live.
And the digital presence is great. And I love what you said about be where you're at, but be all in where you're at. The key is, before you really can develop and truly develop a digital presence, you've got to have that digital strategy to go along with it.
Yes.
You've got to know how, what am I going to need resource-wise? What am I going to need volunteer-wise? And if you don't have the strategy in place, a wise man once told me, if you fail to plan, then you plan to fail. So it's like, you really have to know and be able to have that strategy. And that strategy has to be fluid too, because like both of you have already mentioned, some things you're going to try and it's just going to go bloop flat on your face. And some things you're not going to try and they'll succeed. One of the things I learned, and what you were saying about interaction.
Yeah.
One of the things I learned really quickly in the youth ministry that we were in for years over at Bethany is to develop a presence on Instagram. And that once you go live on Instagram, then you've got to have somebody there to respond to the people that are coming in.
Yes.
And that's part of the strategy that we developed both at for both of the churches that I'm in now, that I had served in, the church I'm in now. You've got to have those in the moment when someone has a question.
Yes.
We've developed also as a part of our strategy, first-time visitor pages on our website. If you're seeing our stream online and you're visiting with our website and you're seeing it that way, you need to be able to say, hey, okay, I'm first time here. And
Good. Yeah. I think in this current age, if you don't have a presence, you almost don't exist. Like, if I can't look you up before I'm expected to show up to anything and figure out what it is. So I think having a digital presence is important because it's kind of the first thing that demystifies and makes it less weird or spooky for people to engage, right? It's like, if I'm going to go to this restaurant, I want to be able to figure out what's the location, what are people wearing, where do I park, like we do a lot of investigation. And so I think a lot of that happens at the presence level, right? So make sure that your digital presence, if you have one, is answering the basic questions, right? But then the next step is for us to have a strategy, because I think the strategy is what makes it meaningful interaction, not just a like or just a show up, right? I think that the strategy is the part that maintains the relationship. It's the intentionality behind the pacing of, when am I going to communicate? What am I going to communicate? Do I do only certain kinds of content on this platform and different kinds on this? Like, being able to say the why behind why this Instagram page account exists, or even this TikTok exists, or this whatever. I know I talk a lot social media, but even Spotify or even websites, all of these different things, they all serve different functions and people show up to them for different kinds of engagement. Yes. So having a strategy behind that, I think, is so important.
I love that. I love the idea of the the presence feels like it could be like this one-hit wonder moment, one great post. And the strategy is it's a continuous presence that has a purpose. It's moving them towards a goal. It's a step towards something. So if someone that's listening to this conversation, they may be present on 1 or 3 digital channels, let's say, but they haven't started putting together the actual strategy. Because like a lot of us, we were just trying to be wherever the students were in the last couple of years specifically. But where do you think they should start? Like, where do you start with your strategy?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, one thing that comes to mind, I'll say this real quickly and then probably think some more on it. But I do think figuring out what your call to actions are. A lot of times we put information out there, but we don't tell people what to do with it. And so one of the first places I would go is like, if you have a link tree or a link in a bio or any of that, say what you do at that place. Is it signing up for a newsletter? Is it watching a podcast? Is it going to our YouTube? But the call to action of what do I do with what I found here is the first place of being like strategic with your language.
That's so good.
I love that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Definitely.
So that first post isn't the landing spot. It's pointing them to, okay, cool. Love that.
And you've got to get your senior leadership on board with it too. Anything you do has to flow through them so that they know what you're doing, when you're doing it, and the reason behind what you're doing it. Yeah. And developing that intentionality about it is critical as well.
Yeah, Dave and Leslie, those are excellent points. And intentionality is where we rock. You're totally online. So if I'm just haphazardly throwing stuff out there, I've got some wonky algorithm and I'm not reaching a soul. And then we also have to realize though that in doing that, and this is for the person who's listening to this right now that may feel like I have 0 likes, I have 0 follows, something is not right. No, it can be right because a lot of our students, they just window shop. I can scroll and scan, and you'll never know I even watched it.
That's why the presence matters. That's so true.
You'll never even know. So that's just like, I love that, Leslie, that you mentioned that, to say what it is you want to happen with this information. Give me an idea of what I'm supposed to do next, and when you're doing this stuff, celebrate those small wins. If that viewer goes and does that, I am liking up all that post and then throwing it back on my page.
That's so good.
Because they want to know, okay, so I did it, now what? Well, oh, look what happened. Let's do it again. Let's not forget that we're kids and we're youth and we're adulting. So we like some microwave instant gratification. What happened with what I just did, and then, I want to do it again. That had, the good vibes. It gives me all the feels, so we have to rock in their language.
Yeah. I feel like what keeps coming to mind as I'm listening, 5 or 10 years ago in digital spaces, I feel like the goal was just pushing information. Honestly. But really, it's more about inviting conversation. Yes. And both of you, Nicole, you and Dave mentioned this, the importance of when you go live or when you ask a question, are you actually present for the answers or for the people who show up? And I keep coming back to how do you have people show up? If you have an in-person service happening and you have all volunteer power happening that in the walls of your church, who's showing up online? Do you have volunteers in that, or is that happening at a different time?
For us, that's happening simultaneously. Yeah. When we started going into live stream, we intentionally went to 3 different platforms, simultaneous live cast, and both of the platforms that we had the availability to have people interact is we had people posted right at the computer that were watching. Comments come in, and as they come in, boom, right there we were, right there we were responding in line on time. Yeah. So you really do need to have both, because any interaction you can make is a good interaction.
Yes. And there's hope for you, the me, myself, and I team. There is hope. I have figured out how to work my phone, my iPad, and my laptop. So I'm on all of them at the same time. And I am looking and smiling yes, I love that heart. So good. But there's hope. So don't think that, because I know there are a lot of people there are in that space. It's just them doing that ministry. They don't have that volunteer manpower. But it's important, to circle back to the fact that we're going into spaces where youth and kids rock and rule that world. They know what they're doing in there. Go ahead on and empower them to have a scope of leadership, to give them that measure of faith in what they're doing, and let them use their platforms, because in essence, just like Dave mentioned earlier, and I'm sure Leslie hit on it, about letting them be the disciples that they are where they are. It's unique. This is good. Unconventional times call for unconventional measures. Good. We can't continue to do what we've always done and expect a different outcome.
Thank you, Coach Nicole. Coach Nicole in the house. Thank you. Dave, throwing it to you.
Yeah, definition of insanity. They're doing the same thing and expecting different results. Yes. But I absolutely love what you said about empowering students to do that. In the past, that's what we've done. We don't need, let's be honest, when you get to be my age, it's kind of like, okay, you're actually having to turn to a student to say, how does this work? How do you get on here? What do you do? How do I get off? This blew up. What's happening now? Why not just go ahead and put the power in them and say, hey, and it gives them not only a sense of gratification that, hey, look what I'm doing. It gives them a sense of ownership as well. It becomes no longer, Dave's running this cool youth ministry. It's like we're running this cool youth ministry now. And it really, really, it really helps them to grow. And it develops future leaders as well.
Yes, I love that. And you get both points. You get engagement and invitation. So now I can invite somebody else to come do what I'm doing. I have a talking point.
So good. What's the question?
I love how she's rocking in the space. Yes.
I know, right?
I'm just listening so intently.
Right. Okay, so I was actually to kind of take us in a different direction for just a minute. I'd imagine people listening are like, okay, I've been present digitally. I tried to put together digital strategy, but the students aren't showing up, or they're not responding, or it doesn't seem like it's working, or I don't really feel like they're seeing it. Their parents are seeing it, but they're not seeing it, or they're not responding. What would you say to somebody who's feeling that way right now?
That is a really, really interesting question. We've had that happen over the years. Like I said, we first started out with a Facebook Live presence, and the students real quickly let me know, hey, this is, I'm not going on there. That's for old folks. So, I would say this, if you're having a struggle, get your students involved. Sit down with people that in your ministry and your students that are coming to your broadcast, checking in with you, and get all kind of age groups involved, both middle school, high school, across the board, and sit down and talk with them. And what do you want? What interests you? Where can we go? Where can we take this? It's obvious this isn't really cool with you. So, what's it going to take to get you involved?
Yeah, I love that. I rock in this start, stop, keep, and refine. There are things that we do that we're like, these are my non-negotiables. I really want to figure out how to make this work. And there's some things that we just got to let go of. Like what we always used to do is not going to work. What I really want to do may not be what they really need. So I have to stop those things and then refine the stuff. Like refine the things that we wish we could do better. Find someone who's doing it and model it. It's okay. It's the Bible. We all have a copy. Like, so, you can do it. Exactly. I just got a new one. So we can totally rethink what we're doing in ministry, so like take time to do that on occasions. It's not always an inward reflection of who you are and how you do ministry. It's who you want to reach. Just like our algorithms and the mediums that we use change and vary from day to day, the kids, Alpha and Gen Z, are a totally different animal, and they morph and change from day to day.
Yeah, that's real. Yeah. I think part of it too is if we're spending a lot of energy and people aren't showing up, sometimes I wonder if we're trying to reinvent the wheel, because if there are places they're already showing up or content they're already consuming or platforms they're already on, one of the lessons I learned from a little bit of time on Twitch, so watching video games and gamers, there's this thing you do if you're unfamiliar. You can have a group of people watching you live stream while you're playing your video game, but if you're done playing your game, you can go swarm to someone else's game and you can go be in their live stream, right? So you take your 12 people and you say, hey, everybody, we're going to show up in these other people's room. And the feeling of community when that happens is so incredible. It's like, so we can do that outside of the platform of Twitch, but how can we join into things that are already happening? And even I think modeling for a generation who is less centralized, right? So a little more decentralized than our churches where they're not so much committed to one space. How can we model for them that like, I'm a believer and I believe in what Nicole's doing and I believe in what Dave is doing. I believe in what Ashley is doing. So let's all go hang out with them. So I think there are so many opportunities to say like, okay, I've spent all my energy trying to reinvent the wheel, trying to make my own YouTube show, trying to make my own Instagram account or whatever. But what if instead I was more so building a community of other students who are looking for Jesus or looking for what's next in life, and we go do things together with people who are already killing it somewhere else, right? So I think that's an opportunity to get back some of our rest and rhythms and strength and still engage fully. So
see, now you're pulling my heartstrings, Leslie. That's where this online ministry rocks because we can do that. I'm not looking for kids and students to join in what I'm doing. I want you to be enhanced and go back where you are to your church, your home church, the place you hang out, because let's face it, a lot of them haven't been to church. They don't go to church. They watch it online. They interact and engage online, or they have a pastor friend that they meet at Starbucks and have coffee with. So to do exactly what you're saying, Leslie, is like that's where I rock. You're like, hey, whose birthday is it today? You're like, oh, it's so and so's birthday. Okay, y'all, I'm gonna make a post and I want you all to hit it up. And so they get this long camera reel of everybody just wishing them happy birthday. Show up at a kid that's have a great birthday party, say somewhere where kids hang out, and you just like, oh my goodness, nobody showed up for this kid's birthday. Oh, hey, I got like 20 friends. Let's all go show up. And you just go show up. Like, you don't have to know them to love them. Just like I don't have to ask you to pray for you.
That. Yeah, that's so good.
That's good.
Well, that also allows you to, doing that, I love what y'all are talking about there, because what that allows you to do too is to interact with unbelievers. If we're just hanging out with Christian folks, then what opportunities are we having, or are we presenting for ourselves and our students to share the gospel? So, hanging out on some of these platforms, and I love that. I'm not familiar with Twitch, but I love that swarm thing. That's cool.
That is very cool.
I'm going to try that sometime.
I'm not familiar with that space, so I feel like I need to go experience that.
It's fun.
Okay, so in conversations with youth leaders, sometimes what comes up is digital proximity feels great, and it feels like a good connection, and it feels like you kind of build trust. But does it actually disciple teenagers? Can it actually transform who they're becoming? What would you say to them?
That's a resounding yes. There are going to be your anomalies, your exceptions to the rule, but in the instance of children who are in foster care, military transition families, there isn't a church home base. I'm going to have a new church every season that something changes in my life. But for them, that electronic life, whatever can be masked on this, I'm in connection with it. And I can take this with me when I leave care and start my journey. And I'm on my own. I've aged out, but I haven't aged out of my church, so to be able to have portable church, I don't think that should ever go away. It should never stop.
And for those of you listening and not watching, she's holding up her phone. Like that's the portable church. It's with you. Yeah.
I love that, especially because a lot of research coming out right now about millennial parents is how transient they are and switching jobs every 2 years, which means kids might be moving like way more often than we moved when we were growing up. And so you're right. Like the thing that becomes consistent in the discipleship process becomes your digital platforms. That's so good. That's so good. Dave, what would you say about discipleship and transformation through digital platforms? Is it possible?
Yeah. I think when it comes to discipleship discipleship happens in relationships. So if the relationships are strong and authentic and actually a place where you are returning to learn and work out things, there's a difference between content and conversations. And so I think as long as there's a relationship happening, yes, like discipleship can happen. I think we should be aware and maybe mindful if we think content is supposed to do the discipling for us. Maybe I'm like trying to like choose my words carefully. I'm not trying to be spicy. I'm just saying
that was fire.
I just think, like even what Jesus modeled for us is that the disciples didn't even get it, and it was 3 years of relationship. So how do we think an Instagram post or just one post or a piece of viral content is really discipling? Discipling is a process, right? It's an ongoing thing that we're trying to figure out. How do I be more like Jesus? And you kind of only learn that when you're like, oh, I'm not very much like Jesus, and I discovered that because I had a very rude response to this human, right? So it's the relationship, it's the people around. So yes, digital discipleship can happen, but it has to be more than content.
Yeah, I love that, Leslie. That's definitely a game changer, in it all. And the one thing that I hear kids in the tribe say, and that's what we call them when we get 7 together as a tribe, and we just start another one. We don't keep adding to that tribe, so that those relationships can be forged and they're free to talk. They say, I've not really encountered another pastor who lets me see their mistakes,
That's real.
That's real. When we go to churches, we look at it like, oh man, this was amazing. And then when you work in a church, you're like, there's a lot of work to putting this together, and that's what discipleship is like for them. They're watching other people do it, and they're like, I can never do that, because they're examining everything that they think is wrong about themselves, So like I tell them, I said, you know what I want you to do? Ride your scooter, ride your bike, whatever it is you transport yourself on, if it's skates or whatever, get on those and ride that for 24 hours, just 24 hours. If it takes one day, do it 21 day, that's fine. And then the next day, I want you to put a Jesus loves you sticker on your back, and I want you to do it again. And they're like, well, when I did it the second time, because I had the sticker, I was more careful of what I was saying. I was more careful of where I went.
Really?
And I was more careful of how I responded to people.
What?
And I said, the accountability to a sticker raised your life.
Now.
Right. So, and they're like, so are we like the sticker ministry?
I was just going to say, we need to rethink what we're creating in XP3, right?
Oh my gosh.
So bring out the stickers.
Bring out the stickers.
A magnet,
Seriously.
whatever it is. But like, just, they need tangible, and that's what I heard, as the person trying to be relatable for them. They need something they can take with them. And we use the example, like, I say, got my OS in my pocket. I love it, And so now they were like, I got Jesus in my pocket, so it may not be on them, but it's on their person, so that they can say, okay, let me think about how I'm saying this. And they take it out and they look at it and they're like, okay, that's not what I think I should be saying, And I'm like, it's okay to say that. Ms. Cole's going to say that out loud.
Yep.
So just in those spaces, just totally, that's the rethink,
Yeah. I feel like we have hit a lot of different things, and I hope that everybody listening, because I know I feel like inspired to, like, what can we be creating at Orange Students that helps churches do this easier? Because it feels like a whole nother layer. I don't want anyone to leave this conversation today without some practical handlebars to what we're talking about and first steps. So a very direct question I'm going to ask everybody in this conversation is, how are you developing digital proximity with middle schoolers? And how are you developing digital proximity with the high schoolers that you're responsible for? Like, what are some practical things you're doing that are working for you? It may not work for me, but I want to know what's working for you, or what's not working, or what tensions you have and you're wrestling through. Because I know for me, I'll go first. I feel like with digital proximity with middle schoolers is so tricky, because not all of them have phones yet. Not all of them are allowed to be all the places. So sometimes you accidentally, by being so present digitally, it feels like you make other students feel left out, or you make it harder for their parents who have rules about when they're allowed to engage, on different platforms or in different spaces. Or they might not be allowed to participate on digital spaces in the privacy of their house. They have to be in a public area, which I totally respect. But that is a tension I feel constantly in what we're creating in the middle school space, is how do I develop digital proximity to them without it being either creepy or, disrespecting the family rules. And I know I'm not alone in that. I feel like I talk with ministry leaders. We're all trying to figure this out.
Yeah.
So coach me, Coach Nicole. Coach Nicole, come
and
to
there's
the mic.
We throw clay, not shade. But,
Amen. Yes.
okay, so I did have a particular instance of that. I had a young lady who was amazing. We used to call her Revelation because she could take the smallest thing and find God in it. And I was like, other people need to hear what you're saying because it's relatable. They can take that with them. And so it started with the conversation with the parents, like, hey, I want to empower your child to do more with the gift that God has given them. Do you trust me? Because when we ask a parent that, it one puts us at a vulnerable state. I'm asking what you think about my ministry. I'm asking if you think that I would be able to allow Jesus to flow through me and direct your child. And when we ask that question, most times my parents have said yes. I've had a parent say no. It's okay. It's not the end of the world. It's okay. It's okay. And I don't go back to the kid and be like, your parent said no. Like, that's a devastation. So we stay away from there. But when the parent says yes, you need to have, like we talked about earlier, Leslie and Dave hit on it, a strategy. Okay, so this is what this is going to look like. We're going to work together. We're going to have an account that you're going to be collaborating with. So the parents are kind of connected to that account. And this is what we're going to be putting out there. If at any point you don't agree with what's happening, or if you see a change in grades, or you see a change in life or the way they're presenting, then we can come back and have a conversation. I want you to know that I respect you as a parent and your rules, that we're in this together. That's why I love Orange, because it's all about the partnership. So I can't forget that these parents need to also know how to disciple their kid. I'm not going to be there 24/7, even though I'm portable, holding my phone. So just in that alone, it changes how we do it. And digitally does offer a lot more empowerment. Like, I'm out there, I'm putting out there, I'm following, but I'm like that sticker we talked about earlier. I'm the accountability. They know that I'm friends with them on their accounts.
Yeah.
So they respond differently. And we can look back. I said, I want you to just scroll back through your account when I wasn't present. What were you posting? What were you doing? Are you proud of what's on there? And they were like, no, not really. Then start fresh. That's your rethink. You don't have to keep that account. Because if it's not a full reflection of you, if I just meet you for the first time and I flip back through your account, I'm going to be like, hey, you had some questionable things going on. Well, what was happening? And are you ready for that conversation? And if they say yes, we have to be ready to show them how to show Jesus even in that, like how to tell their story. So in all of that, if you're listening to those points, that's what discipleship is. I'm going to walk the messy life with you. I'm just walking it out from a digital standpoint. And if you're not digital, it doesn't exclude you. I want you to be a part of it. So we're going to find a way to connect you in, because just like if I had a volunteer show up in this minute, I'm going to find something for that volunteer to be connected in. So when kids show up, we have to find a way to connect with them in what we're doing, or allow them to connect into what we're doing. And then we're still connected.
That's good.
Like, I remember this statement. A kid said, I want to go where you go. He goes, but I don't know quite how that whole saying in the Bible goes, but I want to be with you. Are you going to be with me? Are we going to be together? Yes.
I love that.
Yes.
That's great.
We can do that.
Coach Dave, before I throw it to you, I have another question, Nicole, for you. How does your strategy as an all online church, how does it shift, or does it at all, from the middle school to high school phase?
Now, that's the interesting part. I'm so glad you asked that, because people give me the side eye when I tell them that sometimes my middle schoolers are actually discipling my high schoolers, because they're like, say what? And I was like, yeah, because there's no bearing, just like there's no little Holy Spirit, there's no big Holy Spirit. If my middle schooler is really getting it and they've connected with my high schooler, who am I to say that you can't disciple this person? If they're listening to you and they're willing to follow you as you follow Christ, I'm supporting. I'm doing it. And then it's so wild, because I'll get like a high schooler be like, I got this kindergartner and I don't know what to do.
That's amazing.
But they see it like, okay, so I have a middle schooler helping me. Who am I helping? So we always do the one up and one back. Who are you helping that's ahead of you? Who are you helping that's behind you? Because that's the life. Somebody's struggling. They need your strength to go forward. And when you get weak, you need someone stronger than you to pull you forward. So that's how we do the discipleship pieces in there. And they're all on different tracks. So I'm too old school. I have a giant notebook.
Yeah, girl.
Because I'm like, wait, where are you? Who are you talking to? What are you guys doing?
Something's got to live in the physical world.
Yeah. So it's totally written down. And we do get together. Don't misinterpret that we don't get together, because we get together because, hey, Mama Bear's got to eat and kids love food.
Yes.
So we're gonna have some tacos. We're gonna grill. Like, so, we do life, like real life. So we're, some of it is what we call phygital. So there's going to be some physical aspects and there's going to be some digital aspects.
That's what we call let's get phygital. No, that wasn't appropriate. Okay, Coach Steve to the mic. Coach Steve to the mic.
He's like, why? What's happening?
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. One of the things that there's such a difference in the schools of thought, middle school and high school. And I love what you said about going to the parents, because we have to go as youth leaders. We have to get the parents involved. Yeah. At best, we get them 2 to 3 hours, maybe 4 a week, but the parents are with them all the time. Yeah. And as youth leaders, we are a partner with their parents to bring these kids to Christ. I love what you said too about the mentoring. That's one of the things that we encouraged at both churches that I've served at, is somebody's watching you all the time. Mm-hmm. And you're looking ahead and you're looking backwards. One of the things that I found that we had to end up doing, because we did have some parents that were like just flat out, my kid is too irresponsible to have a phone. They've already lost 3, and I'm not going to the store and buying a 4th. So how do you reach those kids? I mean, there are some times where you just got to go back old school. Pick up the phone, call their house. Hey, can I speak to so and so, and just talk to them and get them engaged that way. I would send letters home to parents. Yes. Okay, this is what our schedule is going to look like for the next 2 to 3 months. And I did that regardless, even before we started into a digital presence, just so that, they have a list, they know they can put that, stick it on the refrigerator. Oh, okay. Yes. I know I need this done. But the key is, regardless, middle school or high school, each student needs to know that they're important, that their input is valued, appreciated. They are valued and appreciated, and very much needed to be a part of your ministry. So, whatever it's going to take to do that, that's what we got to do. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's good. I mean, I don't have like a real answer for like how to reach middle schoolers specifically. My heart goes out to parents of middle schoolers, especially the ones who are like, I'm not ready for my kid to have this piece of technology with them all the time. So the thing my mind goes to is I feel like every kid needs a plan. Like, how are you going to engage with media or technology in general because of where the world is and where the world is headed? Having a plan of not going from social media and all of technology off to all of a sudden it's all on. That doesn't seem right. So I think there has to be some type of plan. The way we go from, okay, your parent lets you drive around the parking lot, then you get your learner's permit, or, you kind of have a plan on things that are incredibly important, but also need some strategy. So some kind of plan to walk you from not being on technology to being fully on technology. My other thought.
Wait, before you go, I was going to say, I think we have like a technology timeline. That we'll drop in the show notes.
Yeah, that's good.
If you want to share it with parents in your ministry, it's just like having those conversations through the phases from cradle to college and like growing that conversation. So that's a good point.
That's good. That's good. One other thing I'd say on this is, in my seat where I'm mostly thinking about high school students who are largely online and have phones and things like that. The reality is that Gen Alpha is going to be the largest generation in the history of the world. We have to keep that in mind as we think about how we center them and what we create for the future, if that makes sense. So even as we develop a digital plan or a digital strategy for our ministries, I think a huge part of it is not inviting them to speak into it, but mostly co-creating with them, because these are the tools that they will take to its next level, right? And so having them come up with like, what's the plan and what's the strategy? A lot of times I like starting those conversations with high schoolers just to get in their head and just kind of mess with them and ask them like, hey, what age did you wish you had a phone? And they'd say something like 10 or 11. And then you start asking questions and have a bigger conversation. You say like, man, at what age did you maybe like realize like, man, this is really not I haven't been using this in the healthiest way. And they're like, maybe 13 or 14. And I'm like, okay, so when you're a parent, how old do you think you'll like let how old do you want your kids to be when you think you'll let them have a phone? And they'll say an older age. And so even helping them have their own perspective shifts on, I wanted it when I was younger. I realized my parents did the right thing by keeping it from me until I was a little bit older. And so just having conversations with the people who will be leading that next generation, which right now are millennials, Gen Z, who will be parenting Gen Alpha, like how they view technology is very different. And so just partnering with them as they kind of take over the world in the next, 10 to 20 years, I think is important.
Leslie, I love that you hit on that, because in foster care, kids in out of home care, they have an electronic plan. So they can't even get a phone unless they're on the plan. Yeah. And it delineates all that. So it's like how long I can have it for, not just like on a regular day basis, but when I'm in school, when I'm not in school, like when it's testing season and when it's not. And it's something that we sit down with the kid and build. So when they get their phone, this is the contract, you signed it. So this is what I'm holding you to. And they have a copy of it.
Yeah, that's important.
And like that really, it helps a lot of them kind of balance what they're doing with social media, and they know it can get taken up. Like you signed
the paper, you knew this was the consequence.
Just like they got jailed for social media, the cell phone has a little jail box.
For sure.
Well, that's why they call them cell phones, right?
Exactly.
Stop. That's amazing. That's amazing. All right, you gave a ton of great ideas here. Is there anything that you are currently rethinking?
Yes. I think as research is coming out about how social media and our engagement with media is actually changing brains, I used to think that was maybe a negative thing, that social media is changing how our brains are wired. And I could see all the negative implications on it. And you can find all the negative research. I'm rethinking and kind of reframing that of saying, I don't know that I can stop a million, billions of brains from changing. So how can I rethink how I lead in that space? And I think it's leading with empathy. If it really is rewiring brains and there's maybe more anxiety because I don't have a phone or I'm not on social media or all my friends are this place and I can see their location, like there's so much angst that can be happening around it. And it's messing, or not messing with, I don't want to use that language, but it affects how we see ourselves. It affects our relationships. It affects just all these different areas. And so I think we have the opportunity to then lead with empathy of saying like, man, it is kind of triggering to not have social media and all your friends have it. So how can I lead with empathy and not lead with a rule or necessarily a guideline, and bring them back to this is why we have the plan, right? If there is a plan. And so I just think there's just way more compassion language around why and why not to be on social media.
That is such a good reminder. I love that.
Yeah. I love, Leslie, that you hit on anxiety, because that's something that we're seeing so much of, and then not just the piece of coming out of the pandemic, but it was there before that. It just amplified it, So like, I love leading with empathy, because that can be the solution, instead of part of the problem to this amplified anxiety that our youth and our kids are experiencing. I know one school recently was on lockdown, and I was there for it, the duration, and watching the kids get picked up afterwards. There was no place, so I'm like, they're running to their cars, there's something wrong. Like this didn't used to hit, like kids say, this hit differently, that didn't used to hit like that for them. And so I asked this young lady, I said, what's going on? And she's like, I can't find my mom. She's not where she used to be. And I don't know where she's at. And, so I'm thinking to myself, like, just like for us, when we're rethinking how we do ministry, I love that we're adding that aspect of empathy into it and compassion, but don't spread yourself so thin that kids can't find you when they need you.
Amen. Yes.
That's so good.
Yes. And that goes back to what we've been saying all along, is about we are about the business of developing relationships.
Yeah.
And they need to know, our students need to know there was something I posted years ago that, when I tell you that I love you, I don't say that just to hear my voice talk. I say that because I realize that you students are one of the greatest things that have ever happened to me.
Yeah.
And for them to know that and see that modeled out, that's huge in their lives.
Yes.
For me, I got a little bit of a different tact. We're coming out of the COVID era. So one of the things that I'm trying to rethink now is how to balance the online presence versus the digital presence, as well as how do you handle students who are so used to having that portable church in their hand, having that phone in their hand, and how do you handle with them coming into your meeting place now, and they're locked into that phone.
Yeah.
It's a little bit of a struggle.
Yeah.
And how do you handle that in a graceful way, showing empathy that maybe if they've been in school all day, it may be that this first time they've had a chance to see anything on their social media. First time maybe their phone's been on all day, and yet you're inviting them into your meeting and saying, okay, all right, this is changed now. So that pivot is a little bit of and how to keep that balance is a little bit of a struggle that we're trying to work through.
You mentioned your online presence and the digital presence.
Right.
Are those two different things in your mind?
Oh, no, I'm sorry. Maybe I misspoke there.
I probably misunderstood.
It's an in-person presence versus an online presence.
Okay, that makes sense. That's good. I think something I've been rethinking as a youth pastor, content experience creator, the whole idea of like one of the best ways to coach teenagers to use digital platforms differently or better or in a more healthy way is to not only be a consumer, but also a creator. And I think this generation of teenagers, they are creators at heart. Like that's what everything is in the digital space. And so how do we as youth workers help them not just consume more digital platform, but how do we actually invite them to be creators on it? And I know you guys talked about like students being involved, but like, does that shift in like how we're making our posts or how we're making our content, or like just what does that look like to invite that community and allow their amazing gift of a generation that creates in a way that none of us have were wired or were taught to create at that age? Like it's a beautiful thing. Like how do we leverage that to be the mouthpiece of our ministry?
Right.
So I think that's what I've been thinking about a lot.
Yeah. That's awesome. I really love that this is the conversation, and I wish I had like this be all Coach Nicole moment, but it's okay that I don't have all the answers, and it's okay if you don't have all the answers.
Coach Nicole. All right, y'all. Thank you so much for being here. You gave all of us, including myself, so much to think about. And I'm sure we could keep having this conversation for a few more hours. Hopefully we will continue the conversation in the comments. If you've been rethinking something, please DM us at Orange Students on Facebook or Instagram, because we'd love to rethink it with you.